Hello and welcome to the fifth episode of our series here on Beta Takle. My name is Tziontasai, and with me I have a guest from the DMV area who is Kasis Abbay. Hopefully, most of you will recognize him, but he can also give us a brief introduction about himself and where he serves right now.
Thank you, Zeon. As you mentioned, my name is Aziz Abbay, and I serve in the DMV area in St. Paul Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. I'm a church administrator there. Been serving for the past 3 days. 3 years of serving the youth and the English-speaking community around the DMV area.
All right. Now, today's episode is surrounding all about the new year that we have just embarked on. So, Kasis, could you kind of give us a glimpse? What is really this new year, and how can we relate that to our spiritual life in itself?
Great. Okay. Thank you, Zeon. So, based on this new year, upcoming new year, I'm going to give you a few message starting from scriptures that would be beneficial for our spiritual life, the way that we need to look into the upcoming new year. And a great title for this message would be what St. Paul talk about, that how he leaves the back of the past his life and he stretches forward to the new coming. And then more so than that, King David also talks about in Psalm 64, verse 12, talking about your crown the year with your goodness, and your fields will be filled with fatness. King David mentions that how God himself crowns the year with your goodness, and your fields will be filled with fatness. በቸርነትህ ዓመትን ታቀዳጃለህ። This is a very deep message that we always sing this in the new year to come. When every time when we celebrate a new year, we chant this chanting. And it's very imperative that we need to focus on when King David mentions these verses, what he is referring to. So I would say we can title it saying crowned with goodness, crowned with goodness. Usually when a new year starts coming, our hearts filled would be filled with reflection, or at the same time with anticipation. What do I mean by that is, we just finished past year, whether it could be joy or it could be sorrow, whether it could be a victory, whether it could be a struggle, right? But at the same time, there will be an anticipation of the coming new year. It could be some people have anxiousness of what's going to come to the new year, right? But our church gives her wisdom to us based on the chanting of King David, saying, "Your crown the year with your goodness." You, which means the Lord, crowns the year with His goodness, and your fields, God's fields, will be filled with fatness. And then this version, or this verse in the psalm, it's not just poetry. People just think of it as a chanting and poetry, but it's more than that. It's a declaration that God himself is the one who have providence. God himself is the one who crowns time, and that his fields, not ours, but his fields, which he provided for us, will be filled with abundance. And let's take a few phrases from here and separate and then explain what it means. So when it says God crowns the year, he wants to focus that it's not us, it's God who crowns the year. So it says you crown the year, and the word crown is very fascinating. If we see the root word of crown, the root word of crown from the Greek definition is titled Stephano. Stephano is what it means, crown. And we know this word in some of the names of our saints, right? That is Saint Stephanus or Saint Stephen. And the deeper meaning of the name of Saint Stephanus or Stephano is crown, which means he is crowned in his finishing of his journey. Crown represents a victory, right? So when it says that you crown the year, it doesn't say that I crown the year with my own resolution. right? Mostly we think that, okay, New Year comes, like, what is your resolution? What are you doing in the new year, right? And we completely forget and take out of that He Himself, the creator of the universe, is the one who crowns the year, not us. We think that we crown the year with our achievements, our resolutions, but crown, as I mentioned, is a victory. When someone wins a race, they would be given a medallion, but in the old times, maybe like a crown that could be seen. God is the one who gives a crown. When a king is reigns or being sit on a throne, he will be given a crown. God is the one he makes the king to wear the crown as a sign of authority, right? So to say God crowns the year means He's the one who brings the year to fullness. What it means, He's the one who gives meaning, who marks its victory, the year of victory. And a good illustration that I can think of it, and especially because it talks about rain and harvest, is like a farmer, right? A farmer who labors or who toils working on the field. He plows and he scatters seeds and he waters, but he cannot control the rain or the sun that is needed for the harvest to grow, right? So at harvest time, he says the crop is the Lord that gives. That we do our best, but at the same time we wait for the providence and the gift. So too, with the year we labor, we do things that is needed in our life, but God is the one who crowns it. So as we enter into this new year, um, let us not carry the burden of thinking that we are responsible to do things. We are. It's our own ability to achieve something. It's our burden to accomplish something. No, we as a Christians, we plan and we hope that and pray that God interfere in our path in our life. But God is who crowns our efforts and His goodness. That's the first thing that we would learn from this verse that actually um, tells us what it means to going into New Year. And in the second phrase in that verse, it says, God fills the fields with fatness. The psalmer, which is King David, continues saying that your fields will be filled with fatness. In the way that we think in the modern times, fatness has a negative connotation, but that's not what it means. Fatness means in the chanting, it means with richness, with abundance, with overflow, with fertility, and things like that. God is the one who provides that. It's not in the fatness in the more modern sense, right? So when it talks about this, is not about only an agricultural or farmer kind of things blessing, but through the ancient Israelites, literally praying for rain and harvest is what provides the abundance, and because of that, it mentions in the Psalms. And for us, but it talks about it a little more deeper truth, right? When God crowns the year, He does not only just say, "Oh, the new year comes," but He nourishes the new year. He provides things within the new year. He fills the fields with goodness, with fruits, with harvest, right? And not only the fields, but the fields of our heart, right? There is a patristic saying by Augustine that kind of gives the context on this one. He says, uh, "The fertile fields are the hearts of the faithful. The fertile fields are the hearts of the faithful, which God waters with His grace until they grow rich with the fruits of righteousness." And if you guys remember in Matthew chapter 13, God also, through His begotten Son Christ, spoke about the farmer scattering the seed on the harvest, and some scattered into the dry field, and some in a good field, right? So when it says it reaches the harvest, that is the harvest of our heart, right? So the fertile fields are our hearts, and it notice here it says God say, or the psalm, the psalter who's King David mentioned, saying he did not say our field, he says your field, right? This reminds us that we also, or the fields and everything, belongs to God. It's by His own providence that it's by His own goodwill that we are created, and then the earth is also created, and it belongs to God. Our hearts, our home, our achievement, our acclamation in work, in knowledge, and everything, it belongs to God. So it says your fields, and it's very important to highlight that achievements are the gift of God, right? Um, and when the field belongs to him, he fills it with fatness, with richness, with abundance, with spiritual fruit. And in the same analogy of the field, if we in the illustration, if you think of a field after a heavy rain, right? After the soil is dark, soft, full of life, but then soon, after patiently waiting, soon, like a green sprout would come, a green grass or fruit would sprout from should begin and rise from the field, right? So too in our life, that knowing God's providence, if it is barren, placing the word of God in the hope and waiting of his divine hands in our life, sprouts with forgiveness, with joy, and with healing, all the fruits of the spirit that Galatians, in the epistles of Galatians, that St. Paul talks about, that would sprout from this barren heart of ours. So it's his field, but he will make it full and abundance, right? So, what is the application in our life? How could we accomplish this? What are the fields, as we talked about? It's and of your life. That's what we need to be able to reflect. What is the barren fields in your life? Is it your work? Is it your prayer that's not being answered? Is it your situation of health? Whatever that you think it is barren in your heart, surrender them to God. Surrendering them to God and making them have the authority to do whatever that is needed in your what pleases you. But this heart, this situation, this my life is your field, right? And surrendering to him, and he will fill them with the fatness and with abundance. That's the second thing that we need to see in this message of Saint King David mentioning about crowning the year. And thirdly, when he says you crown you crown the year, we also need to be able to reflect gratitude from the past, because we're passing from the past year or the year that we're finishing, and but also to trust what is in the future. Gratitude for the past and trust what is in the future, right? To say you crown the year with goodness is also a call to look back with what happened before, right? With thanksgiving, even in hardships, not only in the good things that are given to us, but in hardships, given thanks. God, there were a lot of trials in my life, but thank you that I am here right now. I passed all those, but I'm still existing and persevering of yeah, whatever struggles, but also getting the goodness of God in our life. So God's goodness has crowned our days, and we need to be able to be thankful. So looking backward or the past in that way, but not is also not looking backward, but looking forward with trust. In the same way that He delivers us from trials in the past and gives us all His goodness in the past, trusting Him in the future. Right? The crown is not only at the end, right? So it is a promise that every step ahead in life, in our situations, is under His kinship. It's under His providence, His sovereign guidance. And for example, in the modern struggle, many enter the new year with anxiousness, as I mentioned earlier, right? What it fell, it's gonna come. Like, what if I fell again? What if this so and so that happened in past comes back again, right? What if the economy collapse? What if I lose my job? And all those kind of worrisome thoughts, right? And these fears are real. We're not denying that this is not real. It's real. But as King David teaches us to respond this with the Lord is the one who crowns the year with his goodness and trusting that, right? So have a prayer within you mentioning every in a part of your prayer that God, you have everything is within under your hands, right? Thinking of like that. And in this part, the other blessing or gift that we think is If you think of the race, or for example, running, you cannot be given a medal or a title before the start of the race. You have to continue the journey and finish the race, right? And uh, one of the deepest stories in this psalm, Psalm 64, is it was sung by the prophets and the Israelites who were sojourners, which means who are like kind of an immigrants, right? Going into, from being captive within the Babylon and going from Israel to like they would sing these songs, having a hope that, yeah, we are sojourners, we are just people that are in the path, right? But at the end, God is going to crown us. But this is not only for them, this is us. The reason why this is with us is everything in this year, the past year, or the coming year that God provides in this world. While we are in this world, we are passengers, we're sojourners, which means we're going to pass from this world. So
Right.
thinking of it that, Lord, same way in St. Paul says, like, I finished my journey, a crown is waiting for me, right? So a crown will wait for us when we depart from this world. And thinking in that way, when we think that God crowns the year, not only the year that we're here in this world, but when we pass from this year. And finally, the last point that I wanted to make is, what is the true crown? Is a crown is just a blessing, or is just a gift, or is it something else? Um, Today in the church, we the mazmur, or what we sing, the chanting before the liturgy or early in the morning, mentions about aklil, which means the crown. It says aklila aklilat, right? And sayamihu mula kahanat. He mentions that you, Christ, you are the crown of crowns. When the martyrs struggle and fight through tribulations, when the righteous went into the wilderness, when the preachers, the apostles, when they're preaching, they were looking forward to something. I should say, not something, someone who is Christ, right? They're looking towards him, they're looking forward of him, which is the crown of crowns. The other crown, blessing by itself, is okay, we get a blessing. But the source of the blessing, which is who is Christ, is the crown of crowns, right? So the true crown is Christ himself. So understanding that is very important. The verse points us that Christ, the King, he is the crown of every year, the fulfillment of time, in the Alpha and the Omega. Christ is the crown of time. St. Paul in Ephesians talks about Christ is our peace, and then later on in Colossians, he mentioned saying Christ is our hope. So
Mm.
all the goodness, the hope, the peace, the endurance, the joy, um, and the crown itself is Christ in our life. So the greatest abundance that drips from God's path is not manifested just in it's not a material blessing, but it's the grace of being united and being one and joined with Christ through the church, through the sacraments of the church, through the teachings and the practices of the church, right? So this is the teaching. And finally, Saint Gregory actually of Nyssa talks about saying time itself is crowned when it is filled with Christ. Time itself is crowned when it is filled with Christ, for he is the crown of all good things. And Saint Yared took that out and honored and worshiped and praised and adored Christ, saying that you are the crown of crowns, right? So the people, whoever is, I think, listening to this message, my message that I wanted to convey is God crowns the year, not us. So we need to be able to give all glory, all providence, and all worry, anxiousness for Him, because He's the one who crowns. As crown, we keep it on our heads, which means something that would be seen. God's gift, not our own gift, but God's gift is something that would be shown in this world and to the world to come. That's the first thing. And the second is, when God changed the year in crowns, He fills it with fatness, which means abundance, richness. That's the second thing that we need to think. And the other thing is to have a gratitude for the past, but at the same time to trust what is coming to the future, right? And finally, the true crown of crowns is Christ Himself is the crown. That's why we celebrate. As I mentioned in Kramt, Zamana Kramt, which is like the winter, the darkness, and the rain and everything. After we pass that, we crown, which is with the harvest, with the brightness and everything, and that resembles Christ being shown within our life in our barren heart. And I hope and pray that when we come to the new year, not only to focus on the understanding of the knowledge, but really to change our hearts and give trust everything for Him, because He is the one who crowns, as Saint King David mentions. You crown the year with goodness, and the field, your fields, will be filled with fatness and abundance. I think that would be my message for the people who are listening to this recording.
Very well said. ቃልዎት ያሰማልን. May you hear the
Mm,
word of life, Cassis. I think it truly is very, very important that we don't get so caught up in the past. I feel like a lot, especially nowadays, we have this tendency to reminisce, as I do myself. And we get so stuck up in the past, the good times, the bad, and everything in between. And especially as we turn into a new chapter, a new year, a new leaf, if you will, it is so incredibly important to look out to all the good that is about to come. And even though with that it does come with trials and tribulations, God only gives us anything we can handle. So
mm, absolutely.
that's very well said. And so I really just wanted to briefly ask, what are some things maybe as resolutions that people kind of set for themselves that maybe isn't like as beneficial as they may seem? I know a lot of the times people are like, okay, New Year's resolutions, especially within the Western world, they're so eager to put out New Year's resolutions, have these big goals and big dreams. While they're all good, sometimes we ask ourselves too much of us.
Mm.
So, what are some things that you would suggest to people as they're trying to look for things to maybe better their spiritual health?
That's a very good question. I think I should say the resolution that people make are not bad at all.
Mm,
It's the intention that is distorted, right? People think that, okay, I need to have a better health, right?
yeah.
But what is the intention? Most of people think like how, because it's more focused on vanity, to look good, to be seen by people, admired, or their the way that they look, right? But if someone says, I am the temple of God, I need to properly take care of myself so that I would serve the Lord in the ability that I can. I need to take care of myself. That's a good resolution. And people would say, for example, okay, I need to be better at my finance, right? If the intention is whenever you have abundance to squander the money into any perishable things, right? That's a wrong intention. But if someone says, I need to be better of spending my money so that eventually, like, I should do something that is profitable for the less fortunate, but also for my household. That's a great resolution. So, in most of our resolutions, it's not, I should say not all, but most of it is not bad by themselves. What makes it bad is the intention behind it, why we are doing things, right? But when we come to the spiritual aspect of it, my suggestion is not to be very, more, what's the word? To be overzealous,
Mm,
or to be like, okay, let's say I will, oh, by next year I will go to a monastery and then I'll become a monk, for example, or like I will pray, 24/7 starting the new year, right? Not, something that is unrealistic kind of spiritual achievements is for our spiritual life also a disaster, because when we think of these plans, what our enemy who does not sleep and who does not be silent would say like, great, continue doing that, right? But then when we fall, he will say like, see, God is not helping you. See, there is no benefit of it. You're just tried, right? So a true Christian is a realistic Christian. So what he does is he said, based on my bandwidth right now, let's say I will pray, for example, 3 times a day, right? but keeps consistent on that, being persistent on that. It can be twice a day, right? Being persistent for this year, throughout the year, I accomplished that. And God is the one who crowns another year. And then when another year comes, we will add of any spiritual resolutions that we would have, right? But being realistic is very much important in our spiritual life. That's I'm talking about from spiritual chores perspective. But other than that, like changing the percent, the mentality, cleansing our hearts, these kind of things, we shouldn't wait and say like, oh, I need to be realistic. For example, if there's someone you haven't forgiven, the time is now, right? The day of salvation is today. So that means you shouldn't take a long time to reconcile with someone. You shouldn't take a longer time to confess your sins, and you know try to be have hope in God, and all this change of mindset in our heart. There is no time, but in spiritual chores um, perspective, a lot of people would think of so many things and they fall short, and because of that, they feel like planning is it doesn't make any sense. So be realistic as the plant, because we talked about this harvest, right? When a harvest after the winter season starts, we see in the mascaram or in the new year what springs out, right? Like the fruits or the leaves. But that wasn't the first thing that it's worked on the plant. Throughout the rainy season, it already made a root, right? It already had its foundation, right? So when we have an abundance gift from God, his blessing, his grace, and his what we call in spiritual sometimes a honeymoon time of spirituality. Like when we have that all energy, let's build a root, which means a consistent, disciplined habit. And then when the sun comes, when the trial comes, or anything, even sprouting or growing spiritually won't be hard, right? So my advice is be realistic. Um, Cleansing our hearts do not take too much time, but in spiritual activities that we do, let's be realistic and be persistent of what we need to do.
Absolutely. Intentionality is so important, whether it comes to our worldly lives, but especially when it comes to our spiritual lives. I feel like the quote that you said, a true Christian is a realistic Christian. And I'm not going to lie, I think that might be quote of the video. That was very well said. Thank you, Cassis, for joining us. To all of our viewers that are watching, wherever and whenever you are, thank you for watching. Nkwana Darosatchu, Cassis, Nkwana Darosot. And we will see you at our next episode.
Have a good one.
You too.